Good morning and welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 Twitter handle as you're all known by now, and I'm joined today by Alison McConnell. Good morning, Alison.
Hi Tony, how are you?
I'm very well. Now it's the eve of the big one, calm before the storm and all that. Kind of deadline day went with a kind of whimper yesterday for Celtic. Adam Montgomery and Azadzu Urhoghide left to go to Aberdeen and KV Ostend, respectively. Were you surprised at that they didn't get more out the door, or that no one else came in?
Yeah, that was my surprise. I had wondered just about a couple who might have moved on yesterday. I think it might have been in everyone's best interest for Vasilis Barkas to maybe move on. I think obviously the ball's in his court really in terms of the finances involved in any potential moves away. So I was a wee bit surprised that there weren't one or two more who also went out, and I think there was maybe an attempt for maybe one more to come in. I'm not sure, but I think Celtic had done the bulk of their business early. I think you've seen what they've done from the opening days of the window at the start of January.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a huge surprise. I think the big surprise really was across the city. I think the arrival of Aaron Ramsey is very interesting for Rangers and just what that might do and whether or not he features tomorrow night.
Yes, that was a huge surprise. Came out of the blue, but there you go. Now, Alison, how do you rate the transfer window for Celtic? I've written a piece on the Celtic Way that it's arguably their best January transfer window ever. I've quoted Jock Stein, I've quoted Ange, and I've also quoted Hong Kong Fui. You get everything with my good self, you know what I mean? Worth a read, guys, check it out.
Well, the first thing is that initial impressions would be good. I think it looks as though it's been a very encouraging window. I think the time to properly assess it will be at the end of the season when you can maybe have a look and quantify the contribution of the players who have come in. But certainly what you would say initially is it looks as though there are players who have come in who have immediately strengthened the first team pool of players because they've come in and they're match ready, they're first team ready. And as you've seen with Matt O'Reilly, with Rio Hatate, with Dyson Maeda, I think they've already made a contribution. And I think you would expect them to play a very key role now between now and the end of the campaign. If they sustain the initial impact that they've had, then I would agree. I think it would look like being a very positive window for Celtic.
Now, it's Tuesday, the big game's on Wednesday, but there we go. Our first comment in, Sean McFadden, tomorrow's the big day. Ewan Boy Martin comes in, good morning and hail, hail. And Brian Roberts comes in and says, no sleep tonight, be kicking every ball. I mean, this is the one everybody's been waiting for, isn't it, Alison? You just can't escape the fact that Celtic play Rangers tomorrow night. Chance for Celtic to go top of the league. It's all set up for them, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can escape the magnitude of the game. I think it's huge. I think even before the events of the weekend, it was fairly significant in shaping the latter half of the season. But given what has happened in recent weeks with Rangers dropping points at Pittodrie and then dropping points at Dingwall, all of a sudden Celtic's fate is in their own hands for the first time this season. There's an opportunity now to go top of the league, and I think it's an examination tomorrow night of Celtic's credentials as a championship winning team. I think you have to be looking to win these games at home. I think you have to go out keen to stamp your authority on the game and to show that you have the courage, the belief and the assurance and confidence to go and put yourself out there and take yourself to the top of the league. I think frustratingly for Celtic, they're going into the game without key players. I think Callum McGregor is a massive miss. I think there's been a few whispers about possibility of playing in masks and whatnot. I have to say I would be surprised by that. Just the fact that it was a facial injury, and I think you have to be very cautious with it. But also I think Tom Rogic is equally a big miss for Celtic, and we know what Kyogo Furuhashi has brought to the team in the opening half of the season. So I think there's a frustration from Celtic's point of view that they're not going into this game with a full quota of first team players available, but what they are doing is going in with the wind at their back, given the momentum that they've had since they picked up from the winter break, taking maximum points. I think there's an argument to say that they're not quite playing as fluently as what they were, but what they are doing is getting results, which has been the most important thing.
Now, Alison, you mentioned there players that are missing. Who assumes Beaton's number 6 role? Who goes in there for you?
My guess would be if Ideguchi is fit now, that he could potentially play there with Haggerty and OReilly just in front, just in that advanced position. I think it is a headache. I think also James McCarthy is another option. I think maybe Ange Postecoglou might fancy his experience to go in there. I'm not sure that he's got the fitness to go in and last 90 minutes. I'm not sure you've seen enough from him in this opening half of the season to suggest that he will start, but I think it is an option and a consideration given the players who are out. I think it just maybe adds weight to that one.
Yeah. John Curry comes in and says, "Hi John, how you doing? I push Juranovic into mid and have Taylor at left back. Not ideal, but better than McCarthy all game." People are coming in with their own thoughts on McCarthy coming back into the team. Tim Anon says, "Morning, McCarthy straight in at 6, make a break for him. If we get any injury in midfield, could Julian come in and CV move to the 6? That's an interesting one." And Frank Brennan, "Morning Frank, I keep reading from men who keep talking about McCarthy having to step up and all such other essentially nonsense simply because he's quite literally physically incapable of doing so." End of. Well, I think we'll leave that up to the manager, Frank, to see what he says on that score. But Juranovic going into midfield, Alison, that was something we kind of touched upon yesterday as well. Brian Ralston back and Taylor on the left back, right back. You don't see that, do you? You're going Ideguchi or McCarthy for that role?
I do wonder if it's a change that could maybe take place within the game rather than how it starts and how they line up. I take the point. I think when there are so few options realistically in terms of the players and personnel available, I think everything will be considered. My own feeling is I think it might be Ideguchi. I'm not sure. I think McCarthy's experience may swing it for him. I would expect maybe within the game and how the game goes, there may be changes. I wouldn't expect to see Christopher Julian. I think he's been out for too long to come back into a game like this where the pace of it is fairly ferocious. You know that the standard is high. You know that Rangers will be out to test Celtic defensively to capitalise on any vulnerabilities. I don't think it's a game to come back into for a player who's been out for almost 14 months.
A lot of psychology at stake here, Alison. Celtic haven't beaten Rangers since 2019 in the league, as we've touched. It would be a huge psychological barrier to overcome, wouldn't it, tomorrow night, if they could do that?
I think increasingly the monkey's been on Celtic's back in that respect. I think you have to go back to the League Cup final at Hampden for the last game that Celtic won. Arguably, I think Rangers were the better team on that day. I think they put Celtic under enormous pressure. And they were lucky to prevail and come away with the cup on that day. And that seemed to signify almost a shift in power at that stage. I think now it's a question of belief. I think you have to go into the game with an assurance and a confidence. And I think where that comes from really is winning games. Now, an interesting facet that you could point to is I think the weekend's win, I think, is Celtic's 21st win this season. Now that would actually better the sequence of results from Rangers last season. I think through all competitions, I think they maybe went 20 games without being beaten when you factor in the cup defeats that they had. So what you're seeing is a team here with momentum, with a bit of belief, with a bit of assurance. It comes from winning games, and even winning games when you're not playing particularly well. And I think that's very important when you're going into these kind of games, because all of a sudden there's a different atmosphere around the squad. There's a different feeling within the team. It's a team that you sense the trust in one another, and you sense the trust in an ability to win games. And I think that's a key factor when you're approaching games against Rangers, that you go into them on the back of quite a rich vein of form.
Sean Tolan said, "I win and I'll be a happy boy." I think that's kind of most people thinking as well. Eileen Feeks come in and said, "Just a win will do." I think everybody of a Celtic persuasion is praying for a win And Frank Brennan comes back in. Oh, please, no more silly prediction of 3-0 or 4-0. Tomorrow night has 0-0 and one each written all over it as he'll be parking that bus of theirs at the back in midfield. Yeah, it's. I think Rangers would take the draw right now, Alison, possibly. I think the onus is maybe on Celtic. I mean, it's not a disaster if it is a draw, because Celtic will still be breathing down their necks because of the 2-point differential. But I think Celtic will put the onus on themselves to go for a win, won't they, because they're at home. Maybe try and use that to their advantage.
Yeah, I would agree with you on both fronts. I think Ange Postecoglou's made his philosophy fairly clear throughout, regardless of opposition. I think it's a game that Celtic will go for the jugular. I think they will want to win it. I would say I don't think a draw is the worst result, because there's only 2 points in it, and you know that within a month your hand is about to get significantly stronger. Yeah. If you keep it at 2 points, then you know you have every option of getting stronger as the campaign goes on and as the season goes on. But I would agree. I think there's no doubt that the intention and the setup will be to win the game.
Now, Alison, who plays up front? A lot of Celtic supporters divided on Giakoumakis. Thought he had a terrific game against Hearts. And then the kind of pendulum swung back the other way after Dundee United. But I still think the front three will be Jota out left, Abada out right, and Giakoumakis through the middle. Do you feel that yourself?
I'm conflicted on that one, I would have to say. I've not settled entirely what I think that will be. I think Giakoumakis at times looks quite clumsy in games. Yeah. It looks a bit cumbersome. Now, whether that's due to a lack of game time and a lack of match fitness, I'm not sure. I think what you want for these games are players who are confident, who are assured going into them. I'm not sure how he would be on the back of the performance at the weekend. I think there's possibly an option to play Abada through the middle and play Jota and Forrest on either side. I'm a big fan of James Forrest. I think his contribution in recent years has been understated, and I think I'm not sure that he gets the credit he deserves at times. But since coming back from injury, I'm not sure he's quite at his own level from what we've come to expect in recent seasons in terms of his contribution. So I'm not sure that maybe facilitates such an easy change as the one we spoke about. The other option is possibly to play Juranovic in a more advanced role, which we've seen before this season, and you could bring Ralston back and play him at right back. So there are a few options. I actually don't know yet. I'm not quite settled on what I think the front three will be. I think it will be quite intriguing to see who he goes with tomorrow. And of course, as we were just speaking about earlier, Japan are playing their World Cup qualifier against Saudi Arabia as we speak, and is on the bench. He's not started. I'm not sure how plausible it would be to get him back and maybe hand him a place on the bench. I would see that as fairly far-fetched. So I wouldn't see him starting at all. But it's maybe a rabbit comes out the hat with him on the bench, and then again there's an opportunity to change it within the game.
Well, Andrew was talking about supersonic vehicles the other day, wasn't he? So you might have one revved up for Maida. You never know. Strachan's laptop comes in and says need to supply GG with those low cross balls. That seems to be a strong point for him. And Simon Thomas comes in and says, "Morning, Simon, how you doing? You have to play your recognised striker. Giakoumakis' physical presence will be beneficial against Rangers. I think he'll score." Bold prediction there from Simon. And then Robbie Patterson comes in. Maida plays only 10 minutes of sub today for Japan. I think Ange might stick him in against Rangers. He needs to get back first more than anything else. And Simon Thomas even comes back and says, a prediction 2-1 Celtic, Giakoumakis and Juranovic to score. There you go. And Frank Brennan comes in and said, very good point, Strachan's laptop. We have to put in low cross balls for Giakoumakis, which he loves to feed off. We have noticed that he does like to feed off them. Again, he just had one of those games on Saturday where he missed a couple of chances, but he took one that mattered at Tynecastle and stuck it away well. He was denied by arguably a world-class save by Seagrave's foot the other day, because if you've seen the pictures of Giakoumakis, he thinks he's scored because he's away to celebrate, and he can't believe how Seagraves has got his foot to it. So It's just one of those things. But if you're conflicted, Alison, then who'd be the manager?
Indeed, I think it's where you earn your corn, isn't it? That's what you're paid the big bucks for, is to make these decisions. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think that it's an interesting point that someone made there just about Giakoumakis and the physicality. I think that is a consideration too. I think if you're thinking of Abada, Forrest and Jota, they're all quite diminutive. So I think there is another element to consider with that. I think overall, I think the game will be tight. I think if it's won by either team, I think it will be an odd goal. I think I don't think there'll be a lot of goals in it. I would tend to think it might be a 2-1 or a 1-0. I would say I don't think Celtic will lose the game, because I think just given everything that's gone before, the position that they've got themselves in, I think they will have enough to come out of it with something.
I tend to agree with that, Alison. I think they can press home the home advantage certainly as well. And also, I just look around and I think Celtic have got a player in Jota who can turn it on that kind of stage. And he looks like a player that's in the mood since he came back, and he's been champing at the bit to come back since he was injured. So I think if Jota performs in Celtic, he'll get every chance.
Well, he's one of the real key players. He's one of the quality players that Celtic have. He's a real creative touch. We've seen it time and again this season, of being able to conjure either an assist or come up with goals himself. I think he's key to the way that Celtic play, and I think it has just been frustrating for Ange Postecoglou that he's not had the partnership with him and Kyogo over this last 6 or 7 weeks, because it looked as though it would be particularly potent. I think the two of them had a very good standing. So I think there will be an irritation that you've been denied that in key weeks of the campaign. However, I would take your point entirely. I think he gives an impression of a player who relishes the big stage, and I think for these games you need players who are willing to show a bit of courage on the ball. They're willing to come out and embrace the tension and the energy that will be within the stadium rather than being inhibited by it. And I think he's one of the players who you've seen would respond to that, and I think he could be one of the key players. I'm interested to see if Aaron Ramsey starts for Rangers too. Yeah. I think if he comes straight into the team, it would be I think it will give Rangers a lift. I think there's not any doubt about that, on the back of obviously a very disappointing weekend for the Ibrox side. I think Ramsey will give everyone a real injection of confidence, and I just wonder if that changes the complexion of the game a little bit and whether or not he starts.
Robbie Patterson comes in here and says Jota's a crown jewel in that forward line. You could spin in a sixpence. Now I'm 50 this year, Alison, and even I don't know what a sixpence is. I don't even know if I've ever seen one. There you go. And Kieran Tolan comes in and says, I got a feeling Jota will run them riot. There seems to be a lot of people saying that Jota's going to be a big player. And Strachan's laptop says Ramsey not ready yet. Timonon says Ramsey isn't fit to play. We'll soon find that out, won't we? Another key player for Celtic could be O'Reilly. He's been very impressive in the 2 games that we've seen, Alison. But these are different games entirely. A lot of guys, their first Glasgow derby can pass them by, but Matt O'Reilly's going to be asked to step up to the plate tomorrow night, isn't he?
He certainly will. To be fair, I think the closest he might have come to experiencing something similar was that game at Tynecastle. He made his debut against Hearts, and obviously the hostility would be slightly different to what he's going to get, or significantly different from what he's going to experience at Celtic Park. It's a very different kind of energy and a very different kind of vibe. But I think the fact that he's made such a telling contribution over the last 2 games, I think he looks like a player who will be ready for it. I think he's another one that I think seems capable of the big game occasion. He seems to have enjoyed and have thrived off that. Certainly that his debut at Tynecastle was notable, and it would encourage you to think that he'll cope with all the aspects that go with the game against Rangers tomorrow night. And I do think it's different, the very fact it's at Celtic Park. We know how diluted it is now in terms of the supporters. It's almost exclusively Celtic fans, so you're walking into your own environs, which I think is very different from the shoe being on the other foot.
Well, on that note, we'll reconvene tomorrow, Alison, on the day of the big game, and we'll talk and we'll speak, and probably nothing what we'll say will come to pass in the football match. But hey, that's what we do, all conjecture and speculation, and we cannot never predict an Old Firm game. Jock Steven once said, only a fool would try and predict the outcome of that, as Alex Cameron predicted a win for Rangers. So there you go. We shall leave it on that note. Thanks for all your contributions, guys. Always enjoy it. I read more out today. And yes, I am 50. I don't know what a tanner is. I don't know what a sixpence is. But there you go. I'm sure I'll go and visit my mum and dad, and they might have one locked away somewhere in the drawer, and I'll have a look at it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good day. See you all tomorrow. Thank you, Alison. Appreciate it all the time.